My wife, learning I was infertile, grew distant and eventually left for another man. Her family and friends reached out, but I refused to help. It's common to hear statements like, "I never saw it coming." That's exactly how it was for me. Though I had been married to my wife for 4 years, I honestly thought we were doing well. For the most part, I thought we were in accord. We had a life plan in place. The difficulty is that I felt we both wanted children. We started serious discussions about it as soon as we got married. She would continuously emphasize her wish for 2 or 3 children, droning on about the names we would give them, nursery decor, and other details. She would even spend hours online planning our future children's lives, browsing baby goods and clothing. It kept us linked and provided a topic for discussion. We were excited to begin this new chapter in our lives together, and everything seemed to be going as planned. But then we got some horrible news, which devastated me. After a few months of attempting to conceive, we went to the doctor to figure out what was happening. To shorten a long story short, it was me. The doctor essentially told us that our chances of naturally becoming parents were slim because my count was far too low. It felt like a stomach punch. I felt unworthy. Our entire set of plans went in an instant. The news hit me hard, incredibly hard. I found myself in a bad situation for a while. I was a total catastrophe at first, but therapy eventually helped. At first, she appeared to be quite supportive, saying that it didn't matter and that she would be okay with just the 2 of us. However, there was something off about the way she said it from the outset. She appeared to have dropped it way too quickly. She was all about creating a family 1 minute and then suddenly said she didn't need children to be happy. I understand that people's opinions evolve, but her entire behavior struck me as weird. She had stopped talking about children since she was preoccupied with baby names. Furthermore, it appeared that she began to perceive me in a different light. She would suddenly start making tiny barbs at me, something she had never said before. She would make comments about how I wasn't taking care of myself, how I should exercise, or how I should be more productive at home. Yes, I could have gained a few pounds, but it appeared like she was always looking for reasons to accuse me of something. When I asked her about the dramatic change in attitude, she dismissed it. She said that I was very sensitive and was just imagining things. But I knew there was something wrong. She was not like the woman I married, who would sit with me for hours discussing our future plans. She wasn't particularly harsh, but she had a frigid demeanor about her, as if she had already checked out mentally and was only acting. I think as time passed, I grew to trust her when she assured me that everything was fine. I didn't want to come across as needy or insecure, so I stopped pursuing the topic. In any event, after a few years, we were barely getting by. We had fallen into a practice of rarely discussing anything serious. We seemed like housemates rather than husband and wife. She would consistently ignore my attempts to discuss alternative options, such as adoption or surrogacy, by declaring that she did not want to consider them. I never believed her when she said, "As long as we're together, I'm happy." She seemed more interested in convincing herself than convincing me. She suddenly informed me that she wanted to go on a girls' trip. It wasn't unusual for her to travel with her buddies. She had done it several times previously, and I had always supported her. She had long expressed a desire to visit to America with her friends while we were living in Brighton. We had built trust over the years, so I didn't give it much attention. I ensured she had everything she needed, helped her pack, and took her to the airport. I remember her final remarks before she left. She looked at me and said, "Thank you for being so supportive." I found it unusual that she would say that when I hadn't done anything particularly spectacular. But she appeared so earnest that I discounted it as a simple expression of gratitude. That night, I stayed up to ensure everything ran perfectly. I called her when she came, kept myself busy about the house, watched TV, kept track of the time, and waited for her to text me to let me know she had arrived. Her flight was supposed to take about 9 hours, so I wasn't too concerned at first. When I realized her flight had landed, I contacted her to check in. The phone continued ringing but no one answered. I didn't give it much attention. I figured she was fatigued and had gone straight to her hotel to rest. However, as AM dawned and I still hadn't heard from her, a gnawing worry crept in. I assumed she was merely busy or her phone was on quiet, so I tried calling again and texted her a few times. After a few more hours of radio silence, I was completely freaked. Finally, I called her sister to see if she'd heard from her. Nothing. I was starting to panic. In the hopes that something had gone wrong with her phone or that she just hadn't had time to check in, I even called her purported travel companions. However, they were equally bewildered as I was. When I contacted, they said they hadn't joined her on the vacation. They were actually sitting in a cafe just 2 streets away from our house, drinking their morning coffee. That's when it really hit me. She was not traveling with any other girls. She had no friends with her. She hadn't traveled with anyone. She had simply disappeared. My stomach felt like it had fallen through the floor as I sat there holding the phone. I couldn't understand it. Why would she tell me that lie? Why didn't she tell me before leaving? I tried to tell myself that it was a mistake, perhaps she had missed a connecting flight or was delayed due to an emergency. But, deep inside, I knew the truth. She had planned it. Her stating, "Thank you for being so supportive," and the entire story of a girl's trip were all part of whatever plan she had in mind. I was at a loss for what to do. It seemed like I was locked in a nightmare, unable to awaken. I'd never married a woman like her. I didn't even recognize the person. The coldness, the fact that she had stopped discussing our future, and the subtle jabs at my appearance and health, all of this immediately made sense. I just hadn't noticed. Perhaps I didn't want to see that she'd been drifting away for a time. I just sat there that night, staring at my phone, waiting for a call, a text, anything. However, nothing happened, and I knew it wouldn't. I remember lying there staring at the ceiling, and when I awoke the next morning, I assumed it was all a bad dream. However, when I noticed that her side of the bed was vacant, reality hit in. She had actually left. After packed her bag, she vanished. The promises I had made to myself the previous evening, maybe she was late, maybe her phone died, were no longer legitimate. She had plainly planned it. She wanted to leave. I was in utter denial for the first few days. I kept contacting her phone, wanting to hear her voice and get an explanation. I even left messages, hoping she'd respond. I struggled to find words half of the time, but I kept trying. However, all I got in return was quiet. Strangely, the silence made matters worse. It was as if I'd always been a stranger to her, left alone to figure out what had gone wrong. Her family was originally as astonished as I was. They had not heard from her, and her mother had no idea of her plans. In the end, I visited her family more times than I could count, desperate to meet with her mother and gain some answers. They must have felt bad for me. When I couldn't bring myself to cook, her mother would make dinners for me. She occasionally allowed me to stay at their home. She'd sit with me as I talked about all the little things that didn't make sense, trying to figure out why my life had suddenly become so complicated. To be honest, there were times when I felt too numb to talk. I would simply sit there in solitude. I alternated between wrath, sorrow and guilt. What went wrong? I kept asking myself. Was there a sign that I missed? Wasn't I paying enough attention to her? On certain days, I would go over all of our disputes and chats, attempting to figure out what had caused her to leave. I kept thinking about what I should have done better to save our marriage. It may sound dramatic, but I was possessed by the desire to find it out. I clung to the hope that obtaining the answer would somehow improve everything. I barely slept. I barely ate. My productivity began to decrease. People began to notice. When people inquired about my well-being, I would dismiss it as I was preoccupied with personal concerns. Admitting the truth, that my wife had abandoned me without saying anything, was too embarrassing. I eventually confided in a few close pals. They did their utmost to divert me by taking me out and pushing me to move on. But even when I was among them, my thoughts kept going to her. Where was she? Why wasn't I enough for her to stay? One of the most difficult parts was the constant inquiry from others, neighbors, relatives, acquaintances, and even former coworkers who had learned I was married. Each time someone inquired, "How's married life treating you?" Or, "How's your wife?" It was like peeling off a new scab. I'd simply grin and fib, assuring them everything was all right. But each time I said that lie, it felt heavier. Finally, treatment proved to be the only thing that helped. I'd never gone before, but after months of barely functioning, I realized I couldn't do it alone. I needed to speak with someone who was neutral and did not carry the weight of our common experience. I contacted a therapist and began attending weekly sessions. It helped. I talked constantly about her fury, betrayal, and the hole she had left behind. I talked about the sleepless nights, about lying awake and replaying every scene over and over. The therapist let me realize something I had not been able to accept. If she really wanted to stay, she would have. It was not my fault, she decided to depart. That was a difficult pill to swallow. For a long time, I believed myself that I was flawed and had somehow turned her away. However, I eventually came to see things differently. I chose to ignore her long-standing coldness and isolation, believing that things would improve on their own. I had convinced myself that if I just kept my cool and put in enough effort, I could save our marriage by myself. The revelation that I couldn't, that nothing was ever enough, hurt. As time passed, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. It wasn't until she left that I realized how much I'd lost in our marriage. I had always tried my hardest to make her happy and to keep our home life comfortable. But now, with so much free time, I'm at a loss for what to do. So I began revisiting old pastimes that I had long forgotten. I tried making fresh meals. I went to the gymnasium. I started reading novels that I'd been putting off for years. Finally, my work improved. At first, I was just going through the motions, barely keeping up. However, when I began to feel more like myself, I increased my effort at work. It was one of the few things I still felt in control of, and it gave me a sense of success. I'd always been brilliant at what I did, but now I threw myself entirely into it. The extra hours, the focus, they paid off. I got a promotion. Something I would not have accomplished if I had spent all of my time drowning in my sadness. Nevertheless, there were difficult days. A picture, an old movie ticket stub, or another minor memory would abruptly transport me back to the past. I'd find myself wondering if she ever thought about me or regretted what she'd done. But as time passed, those instances got fewer and farther apart. Each time, it grew little easier to let go. I also reconnected with people I had lost touch with after getting married. We went trekking. We went to the golf range. I began doing activities that I hadn't done in years. Having friends by my side, people who weren't caught up in the turmoil and could support me without dragging me back into the pain, was a huge comfort. Looking back, I realized I had invested too much of myself in that connection. As her husband, I had lost a huge part of me. When she departed, it felt as if she had stolen a piece of me with her. However, I was gradually rediscovering myself. It was not quick, it was not easy. But I was making progress. At the end of that year, when I looked in the mirror, I saw more than simply a man whose wife had abandoned him. I'd rebuilt. I had survived. I was stronger now. For the first time in years, I felt free to live my life without her shadow lurking over me. And I took pride in it. I genuinely thought I'd moved on from everything. After all of the commotion, things had begun to feel normal again, or as normal as it could be. Work was progressing smoothly. My friends kept me busy. I had a routine down. Even my thoughts of her had disappeared. Sure, there were occasional flashbacks, odd recollections that appeared unexpectedly, but they weren't as often as previously, when everything I did seemed to be linked to her. She was the last person I expected to see standing outside my door on Saturday morning. But there she was. She holds a baby in her arms. I got chilled. It was like witnessing a ghost. For a little while, my brain ceased to operate. She appeared nearly identical, perhaps a touch worn down, but otherwise unchanged. And the way she looked at me, as if she truly believed I would be delighted to see her, moved me. I thought I had stopped caring. But meeting her again resurfaced emotions I had long suppressed. For a minute, I stood there in silence, staring. She smiled as if nothing had happened and asked, "May I come in?" A nerve. After everything she has done, she simply walks up here, expecting me to welcome her back with open arms. However, I kept my cool and told her, "No. You can stay right there." I said that I did not want her in my home, bringing all of the chaos back into the place I had established for myself. Despite her bewildered demeanor, she remained where she was and simply began her story. She began by saying, "I know this may come as a shock, but I wanted to come back and explain everything." Her look was hopeful, as if she genuinely felt I would be eager to listen. I was tempted to simply close the door in her face. Perhaps even laugh. But I was too curious. I was curious about the reason for her disappearance and the tale she had come up with. She went on to say that she had made a mistake in leaving and had now recognized that she had lost the best thing that had ever occurred to her. Not my words, but hers. She claimed that after much thought, and after having this child, she had finally realized what was truly essential in life. After years of ignoring me, it appeared that what was most important had unexpectedly brought her back to my doorstep. "This is our second chance," she said, looking down at the newborn. What I was hearing was incredible. Our second chance? As if this child were some sort of miraculous reset button, allowing us to resume where we left off. I was outraged on the inside, but my expression remained neutral. She went on to suggest that, despite having made a terrible mistake, we could now start over, just the three of us. She wanted us to be a family again. "Why did you leave?" That was the question that had haunted me since she first appeared. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I wasn't sure how long I could do it. Now that she was present, I needed to hear the truth. For years, I tortured myself with unlimited possibilities, attempting to make sense of everything. She hesitated, looking down at her feet, as if embarrassed. Then she finally said it. Or, at least, what she said was true. She stated that she had gone because she wanted a child, And she had found someone who could provide one, because I could not. She spoke nonchalantly, as if it were insignificant, as if she hadn't ruined my life, as if I should simply nod, accept, and go on. She went on to explain that, while the man she had left me for did not remain, she had already given birth and had realized she wanted me back. How convenient. I paused to digest what she was saying. She was standing here, confessing that she had abandoned me, fled with another guy, had his child, and now expected me to simply accept it. To pretend that none of this had ever occurred. So, you left. Found someone else. Had his baby? And now you think you can just come back and pretend like nothing happened? I responded with curiosity. She burst into tears and apologized repeatedly, acknowledging she had made a tremendous mistake. I remained unaffected. She kept talking, attempting to persuade me that she knew she was meant to be with me. That I was the person she actually loved. To be honest, it was difficult to maintain a straight face. She sounded deluded. The desperation was written all over her face. It wasn't love that brought her back. It was terror. Then she attempted to guilt-trip me. She went on and on about how tough it had been for her as a single mother, as if she were the victim in this whole situation. As if her own decisions had not brought her here. She assured me that this time, she was prepared to make it work. She said she needed my help. All I could think was, who does she think I am? I let her continue. I stood there listening. Then I'd had enough. You made your choice a long time ago, I informed her. And now you have to live with it. There's no second chance here. She appeared shocked. As if she had never considered the possibility that I may say no. As if she actually believed she could simply walk back into my life whenever it suited her. Then she felt enraged. Just when I thought she'd finally get it and leave, she lashed out, accusing me of being selfish. She demanded that I give her another chance and let her repair things. She even had the nerve to say, I could have taken half of everything and divorced you back then if I wanted to. And then she said it. The house should still be hers. At that point, I felt a burst of relief. Her disguise had finally slipped. Finally, I was seeing her actual self. I did not argue. I did not yell. I simply looked her in the eye and replied, we're done. You wanted a different life, and now you have it. This is no longer my responsibility, I simply stated, staring at her. Then I closed the door in her face, interrupting her mid-sentence. I was not interested in hearing what else she had to say. As I stood there, listening to her muffled screaming from the other side of the door, I felt strangely calm. She had the ability to shout, cry, and knock at will. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never allow her back in. The woman I had once loved and married no longer existed. In her place stood a stranger, a self-centered, entitled stranger who believed she could pick up the pieces whenever it suited her. I stepped away from the door and sat down, feeling lighter than I have in years. I assumed that was the end of it. I figured she would eventually understand and walk away. But no. Instead, she began hammering on the door, screaming various things. Her bravery is admirable. She had the guts to stand up and insist that I listen to her. Here. At my door. The one spot I fought to recapture after she abandoned me. At first, I pondered ignoring her and letting her scream until she got exhausted. But then curiosity got the better of me. I was curious what kind of excuses she would come up with this time. So I opened the door. Just enough to let her know I was listening. Not enough to allow her in. She appeared stunned. As if she'd just been smacked. As if she expected me to react differently. As if we were simply having a usual dispute rather than coping with the implications of her abandonment. Then she began into a long monologue. She expressed her willingness to forgive me for closing the door on her. About her desire to start over. She went on and on about how, if we both worked hard, we could get things fixed. And that's when I lost it. I laughed. Not simply a chuckle, a full, sincere and unrestrained laugh, because this woman possessed more nerve than I had ever seen. When I did, she snapped. She was enraged, as if I had harmed her. As if I were the one who should feel guilty. You left, I informed her, my tone even. You had your chance, and you threw it all away. I'm not just going to pretend none of that happened because you feel like it. Her face turned crimson. Then she started talking about how lost she had felt after leaving. She discovered her mistake too late. You don't understand how hard it was for me, she told me. I didn't believe any of it. No, I replied. You made the decision to leave. You planned it, you lied about it, and then, you went through with it. Now, I scoffed. Now your regret means nothing. And that's when she finally gave up the act. Her entire demeanor changed. The gloomy, remorseful woman was gone. In her place was the bitter, greedy individual she had always been. She attacked me. She accused me of being harsh and not having the grace to give her another chance. Then she said it. If I'd wanted to, I could have taken everything from you back then. I could have taken half of everything you own. She genuinely stated that. I just stood there, staring at her in bewilderment. This woman, who had abandoned me without saying anything, now claimed she was deserved something for not screwing me over even more. As if she deserved recognition for not being as bad as she could have been. So, what? Am I supposed to be grateful? I requested an explanation. Grateful that you only ditched me and didn't take my stuff too. Her expression shifted between wrath, desperation, and remorse. But I didn't care anymore. That was it. That was the point at which all of the years I had spent questioning myself, wondering if I had done something wrong, vanished. For the first time in years, I saw her as she truly was. I felt free. But she wasn't done. She began pacing my porch, shouting about how I'd regret not giving her another chance. I'd never find somebody like her again. She even tried to make it appear as if I was the one losing, as if she were the prize. It was surreal. This was the same woman who had demolished everything we'd constructed. Yet there she was, acting as if I should be asking her to stay. When she realized I wasn't going to cave, she grew louder. She began ranting about how I forced her to leave in the first place. She claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had been more accepting of the entire kid scenario. Her rationale was perplexing. She was actually implying that I had failed her as a husband because I was unable to conceive. As if this validated her decision to have a child with someone else. The mental gymnastics were incredible. To be honest, I was stunned that she was attempting to blame me for her actions. I glanced at her and commented, "Look, if you wanted a kid that badly, you could have just told me the truth. You didn't have to lie to my face and pretend everything was fine while planning your escape." She gave no response. She simply gazed at me, as if I had hit her. But I did not let her talk. "You made that decision entirely on your own," I continued. "And now you have to live with it. That's not my problem." She made one last attempt. Her face returned to that depressed expression, and she pleaded with me to think about the boy. She said I was being unjust by ignoring him. She tried to make me feel guilty by holding the youngster in her arms. As if I were the villain in this scenario. But I was not buying into it. "I don't know that child," I informed her firmly. "I have nothing to do with him. He's not mine. And neither are you." That was it. I noticed it in her eyes. For the first time, she understood. She understood that I would never change my opinion. I would never allow her back into my life. The wrath in her expression dissipated, to be replaced by something else, perhaps regret. Or maybe she was just frustrated because her manipulation wasn't working. I didn't care. She had expected me to fold, forgive, and accept her back. But she was nothing to me now. She waited there for a few more seconds, as if waiting for me to reconsider my decision. I didn't utter another word. And as it dawned on her that I meant every word, I stood there, observing her. Then I closed the door. This time, I did not wait for her to knock again. This time, I knew in my heart that I'd already made up my mind. There was no turning back. I'm not sure why, but I felt like I had finally won. It ended as I moved away from the door. She'd spent a lot of time attempting to manipulate her way back into my life. But I had freedom. There would be no second chances for either her or us. She was now merely a memory, something I had finally put behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt as like I could breathe again. After so many years of pain and guilt, I felt at peace. And you know what? It was pleasurable. When I closed the door behind her, I felt a strange sensation of calm sweep over me. I no longer felt sad. I was not furious. I wasn't even astonished anymore. It was as if all the years of effort I had put into her had vanished, along with the pain, guilt, and never-ending wondering. I was prepared to go on. Because I had finally received the closure I had never known I needed. This time, it was really over. However, life never ends smoothly. A few days later, I received a text from her mother. She apologized. She expressed her embarrassment at how her daughter had handled everything. She had tried to reason with her, but it was evident that it had not worked. Her mother was a kind woman. She had been kind to me when her daughter departed, and I could tell she was genuinely upset about the situation. I didn't have anything against her. However, I did not want to be dragged back into any of it. So I just answered, "Thanks for checking in," and left it at that. I wasn't going to waste time justifying my decisions, and I wasn't going to give her mother any additional information. She knew it was over because she understood. Over the next few weeks, I discovered bits and pieces via social media and mutual relationships. She had allegedly moved back in with her parents, and things were not going well. The child's father, the man she had left me for, was not involved at all. He had bailed. She was left to figure things out on her own, as he had apparently not committed to the long term. Few people wanted to help her. She'd burned almost every bridge. Her previous acquaintances, many of whom had backed me when she initially went missing, had little sympathy for her. They were not about to get drawn back into her drama. They'd all moved on. And frankly, you can't blame them. Even her parents weren't pleased. They did not have the financial resources to maintain her and the child. I knew this because, immediately after her mother texted me, her father called. Curiosity got the best of me. I almost didn't respond. He was clear yet respectful. He added that they were hurting financially and quietly suggested that I might be able to assist them. He spoke about the youngster and how terrible things were for them. "We know you cared about her once," the man added. I listened politely, but the irony of the situation made me laugh within. Then he went on and on about how his daughter only needed a little support to get back on her feet. That's when I joined in. "Your daughter made her choices," I said, my voice calm but forceful. "I am neither in a position, nor in the right frame of mind, to help her." He didn't press the subject. I believe he received the message. Then, out of nowhere, individuals I hadn't communicated with in years, her old friends, began to reach out. Some attempted to use guilt, telling me that she was struggling and that I should find it in my heart to give her another chance. One even had the guts to suggest, "The child requires a father figure. Do not let resentment prevent you from doing the right thing." I refused to back down. I refused to let anyone make me feel guilty about my decision. I'd already given the woman everything I had. Years of self-doubt, trying to be enough, and she'd thrown it all away. Instead of expecting me to save her, she had to accept responsibility for her own actions. The calls and mails gradually slowed and eventually stopped completely. It seems that everyone had finally understood I was serious. That I'd moved on. That I wouldn't get pulled back in. And that's when I really felt at ease. For the first time in years, my life seemed normal. I had friends. My job. My routines. I'd recreated my life on my own terms. It wasn't lavish or glamorous, but it was mine. Ironically, I found myself rediscovering joy in the small things. Things I had overlooked when I was married. I began reading novels that I had planned to read for years. I cooked my own meals. I took long walks. And for the first time, I felt liberated. I didn't need anybody's approval. I wasn't always concerned about someone else's happiness. For once, I arrived first. Every now and then, I would come across someone who knew us both. They'd say, "Hey, whatever happened to her?" I would respond briefly, politely, and change the subject. I didn't need to revisit that part of my life. It wasn't like I was hiding anything. I had previously perfected the capacity to abandon her. The last I heard, things were still not going well for her. She was jumping between her parents' house and sleeping on friends' couches. She couldn't keep a consistent job. Occasionally, someone I barely communicated with would message me, saying she needed aid from anyone who would listen. Some even suggested that she was still hoping I would reconsider. That maybe one day, I'd alter my mind and play father to her child. But that wasn't going to happen. I'd worked too hard to reconstruct my life. She'd made her bed. And I wasn't going to be the one picking up the pieces. Nothing could bring me back into that chapter. I was finished. In the end, I believe I found the closure I needed. She was now facing the repercussions of her own actions. And me? For the first time since she departed, I felt entirely and really free. I'd finally let go of the weight she had left behind. And you know what? I was pleased. Not in a big dramatic way. Just content, and it was enough. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My wife became distant and obsessed with her career. I discovered her affair when I found evidence of her planning a future with another man. 48 hours later, she had nothing, and the electrician she underestimated had the power cut. And now she is begging. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now, let's start the video. What's up, Reddit? Never thought I'd be one of those guys posting their relationship drama online, But here we are. I'm going to lay out the whole show that's been my life these past few months. Buckle up. I'm Alex, 34, male. I've been an electrician since I was 19. Started as an apprentice, made money, worked my way up to journeyman, then master electrician. 5 years ago, I started my own business. Nothing fancy. Just me and 2 other guys wiring up houses and doing commercial jobs around town. I make decent money now, enough to be comfortable without being rich. Me and Jessica, 31, female, met at my buddy Dave's housewarming party 6 years ago. She was his girlfriend's friend from college. Not going to lie, the first thing I noticed was her hourglass body, but what actually got me hooked was how she laughed at my dumb jokes, like genuinely laughing, not that fake polite giggle most chicks do when they're just being nice. We hit it off right away. She was working at this marketing firm downtown, handling social media accounts for local businesses. She was smart as hell, always had something interesting to say, not like those boring dates where you're desperately trying to keep the conversation going. Our first date was at this dive bar that has the best wings in town. She showed up in jeans and a t-shirt. I knew right then I was in trouble. 3 years of dating, 3 years married, we built what I thought was a pretty decent life together. I was busting my ass getting my electrical business going, sometimes working 14-hour days, crawling through attics in the middle of summer or wiring new constructions in the freezing cold. But it was worth it. We bought a modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Well, mostly mine since I put down most of the down payment, but whatever. In the beginning, Jessica seemed to genuinely appreciate what I did. She'd have dinner ready when I got home from a long job, and listen to me about the general contractor who nearly got himself electrocuted because he couldn't wait for me to kill the power. She'd brag to her friends about how her man could fix anything, and used to wear my old work shirts to bed because they smelled like me. Never complained about my calloused hands or the fact that some days, I came home so tired I'd fall asleep on the couch before dinner. Weekends were simple but good. We'd work on house projects together. She actually got pretty decent with a paintbrush and could hold her own with basic power tools. We'd have friends over for BBQs, binge watch shows, try new restaurants, normal couple stuff. Took a vacation once a year. Nothing extravagant, usually a beach somewhere within driving distance, but we had fun. But I'm going to be real. There were probably signs that things weren't as perfect as I thought. When you're grinding every day trying to build something, you don't always see what's right in front of your face. Honestly, I've never been the most observant guy when it comes to emotional stuff. My dad was old school, fix things, provide, protect. Talking about feelings wasn't exactly part of the training manual. Things were good for the first couple of years of marriage. We talked about kids but agreed to wait until my business was more stable and she got to a better position at her company. We had a decent little savings building up, I was landing bigger contracts, she got a promotion, everything was on track. Her family liked me well enough. Her dad appreciated that I worked with my hands and built something from nothing. Her mom was always a bit snooty, typical suburban Karen who thought her daughter would have landed a doctor or lawyer, but I won her over by fixing everything in their house whenever we visited. Nothing builds goodwill with the in-laws like solving the plumbing problem that's been driving them nuts for months. My family loved her. My mom was just happy I found a girl who could put up with me. My dad thought she was a little too into social media and brand names, but he kept that to himself mostly. My younger brother thought she was hot, the little shit, but respected our relationship. We had a good group of friends too, a mix of my construction buddies and her marketing co-workers. Regular game nights, summer cookouts, fantasy football league that got way too competitive. Normal. A good life. If you'd asked me then, I would have said we were solid, not perfect. We had the normal fights about dumb stuff like dishes in the sink or me tracking mud into the house. She'd get annoyed when I'd forget some event with her friends. I'd get irritated when she'd spend too much money on clothes or makeup. But nothing major. No red flags, at least, none that I saw. Man, typing all this out, it's like watching the beginning of a horror movie where everything seems fine, but you know the serial killer is about to jump out. Except in my case, the monster was wearing Victoria's Secret and sleeping next to me every night. The first sign something was changing was probably about 8 months ago. That's when Jessica started talking more and more about this new guy at work. Mike. Mike with his MBA from some fancy school. Mike with his amazing ideas for the company. Mike who was going places? Should have paid more attention when my wife couldn't go 5 minutes without mentioning another dude's name. But like I said, I was focused on growing my business, landing contracts, managing my small crew. Didn't realize I should have been focusing on what was happening right under my own roof. But then it became Mike this, Mike that. Mike thinks we should approach the Johnson account differently. Mike went to Cancun last year and said we should go. Mike says my ideas have real potential. Pretty soon, I'm hearing about Mike's breakfast choices and workout routine, like I give a shit that Mike does CrossFit and eats avocado toast. Around this time, Jessica started coming home late from work. It started with team happy hours that were supposedly mandatory for team building once a week. Then it became twice, then 3 times a week. She'd roll in at 8 or 9 p.m., slightly buzzed, smelling like a mix of bar and perfume. When I'd ask about her day, she'd get this distant look, like she was mentally somewhere else. She started making these little comments about how her college friends were doing so much with their lives. One just bought a vacation home in Colorado, another got promoted to VP at some tech company, always with this weird undertone, like somehow our life wasn't measuring up. Mike says I have real management potential. He thinks I should be aiming higher, she'd say, scrolling through Instagram while I tried to tell her about landing a big contract for a new office building downtown. Like my success meant nothing because I wasn't wearing a suit to work. Then came the appearance changes. She started dressing differently for work, clothes I'd never seen before, more makeup, a new hairstyle, new perfume that probably cost more than my work boots. She started going to get her nails done every week instead of every few months for special occasions. The gym was next. Suddenly, my wife, who used to groan about walking the dog around the block, was hitting the gym at 6 a.m., before work at some fancy new place downtown with classes, smoothies, and personal trainers. $200 a month compared to the perfectly good $30 a month place 5 minutes from our house. She was coming home later and later, always showering at the gym after her workout, so she'd arrive home freshly showered, makeup perfect, hair done, at 8 or 9 p.m. Because that's totally normal after a sweaty gym session, right? I'm not the jealous type. I've never been the guy who checks his girl's phone or tracks her location. I always figured trust is either there or it isn't, and if it isn't, the relationship is already over. But I'm also not stupid. I started noticing she was always on her phone but would turn the screen away when I came near. I caught her texting late at night with the brightness turned all the way down. She would take calls and suddenly need to step outside for better reception, at our house, which has never had reception problems. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the toilet, and she wasn't in bed. I found her in the kitchen, furiously texting someone. When she saw me, she nearly dropped her phone and quickly said she couldn't sleep and was checking work emails at 2 a.m. Sure. Money changes too. We always had separate accounts for our own spending money, plus a joint account for bills and savings. I started noticing larger than normal withdrawals from the joint account into her personal account. When I asked, she'd say something vague about needing to help her sister or investing in a work thing. Credit card statements showed charges at restaurants on nights she was supposedly at girls' night or working late. Expensive clothing stores when she claimed she was just browsing. Hotel bar charges in the middle of a work day. The final straw was Valentine's Day. I'm not usually big on that commercial holiday, but I made reservations at this nice steakhouse she'd been wanting to try. Ordered flowers to be delivered to her office. Even bought her this silver bracelet she'd been hinting about. I texted her around noon to make sure she'd be home in time for our 7 p.m. reservation, no response. I called at 5 a.m., straight to voicemail. By 6:30, still nothing. I ended up sitting on the couch in nice clothes with flowers wilting on the table and a cold bracelet box in my pocket. She finally strolled in at 11 p.m., clearly drunk, saying there was a work crisis and her phone died. She didn't even notice the flowers or my dress clothes, just went straight to bed. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. When I brought it up, she got defensive, saying I was overreacting and making her feel guilty about having to work late. That's when I knew for sure something was up. The Jessica I married would have at least felt bad about missing Valentine's Day, would have apologized, tried to make it up to me. This new Jessica just seemed annoyed that I expected her time and attention at all. I'm a pretty straightforward guy. My first instinct was to just confront her, ask if she was cheating, and have it out. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe self-preservation. Instead, I decided to pay attention, really pay attention. I started keeping track of patterns. Every Tuesday and Thursday, late meetings. Every other Saturday, girls' brunch that somehow lasted until dinner. Always came home with her hair done but no shopping bags from these supposed shopping trips. I checked our cell phone records online, multiple calls and texts to the same number, always at times when she was working late or at the gym. A number that wasn't saved in our family phone plan contact list. One day, while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. It was locked with a new passcode. Since when did she need to lock her phone from me? We used to know each other's passcodes, not because we were checking on each other, but just for convenience. Then the work event started. company parties, client dinners, team outings, that I was suddenly not invited to. It's just for employees. Or it would be boring for you. The Jessica I married used to love showing me off to her coworkers, introducing me as her sexy electrician husband. I'm not the most observant guy with relationship stuff, but even I couldn't ignore what was happening. My wife was pulling away, building a separate life that I wasn't part of. The question was, what was I going to do about it? As I was deciding what to do, the universe decided to hand me a piece of real evidence. I was fixing our leaky bathroom sink when I dropped my wrench, and it knocked over Jessica's makeup bag that was sitting on the counter. While picking up the scattered lipsticks and whatnot, I found a hotel keycard tucked in the side pocket, not from any vacation we'd been on. This one was from the Marriott downtown, walking distance from her office. Weird thing to keep as a souvenir unless it had some special meaning, right? I put it back exactly where I found it and finished fixing the sink like nothing happened, but that keycard kept eating at me. That night, after she fell asleep, I did a deep dive into our finances. Jessica always handled the bills and budgeting, not because I couldn't do it, but she was pickier about that stuff, and I was happy to let her deal with it. I logged into our joint accounts and started going through recent statements. Found large withdrawals to her personal account over the last 3 months. We're talking about $500 here, $700 there, money that was supposed to be for our future, our savings, our life together. Credit card statements showed shopping charges at stores way above our usual budget. Dinner charges on nights she told me she was eating with the girls at restaurants that were definitely not the casual places her friends usually picked. Charges at high-end lingerie stores for stuff I'd never seen her wear. Then I spotted it. A hotel charge from the same Marriott downtown from 3 weeks earlier. Just a bar charge, not a room, but still, she hadn't mentioned being at any hotel bar. When I cross-referenced with our text messages from the day, she told me she was working late on a big presentation. My buddy Trent works in IT security. We've been friends since high school. I'm not proud of it, but I called him up and asked if he could help me access Jessica's email. I told him my suspicions. He was hesitant at first, but he'd been through a bad divorce himself after his ex cheated, so he understood where I was coming from. He helped me set up a simple keylogger on our home computer, just a basic program that would capture her passwords the next time she logged in. Shady? Absolutely. Legal? Probably not. But at that point, I didn't care. I needed to know what the hell was going on. 2 days later, I had her email password. There it was. Message after message with this Mike guy. Weekend plans, complaints about me, how I was stuck in my underdog mindset while Mike was going places, how she was settling by staying with me, how she deserved more luxury in her life than I could provide. The same Mike who I now knew was her direct supervisor, who had just gotten promoted to regional director at her company. The same Mike who, according to his Facebook profile, that I now stalked like a psycho, was married with a 2-year-old and another kid on the way. There were hotel confirmations, screenshots of apartment listings they were looking at together, messages planning their future after she left me, all while she was sleeping next to me every night, eating the dinners I cooked, and living in the house my work paid for. One email from Mike read, "Just a few more months, and my bonus comes through. Then we can both leave our dead-end situations and start fresh. Just be patient and keep things normal at home." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. 6 years together, 4 years of marriage, all a lie, or at least it had become one. I sat in my truck for an hour that night, parked outside our house, just thinking. Rage, betrayal, everything washing over me. Part of me wanted to storm in, pack her stuff, and throw it on the lawn. Part of me wanted to find this Mike and introduce his face to the pavement. Part of me wanted to just get drunk and set something on fire. But I didn't do any of that. I'm not that guy. Never been the type to lose control, even when every part of me wanted to. My dad always said, when you're angry, that's exactly when you need to think clearest. Old man was right about that at least. Instead, I started making plans. If Jessica and Mike were plotting their exit strategy, I needed to be 2 steps ahead. I wasn't going to be the chump left holding the bag when they decided to pull the trigger on their little escape plan. First, I set up a consultation with a divorce lawyer, a guy I'll call Richard, who my buddy used when his wife cheated. Supposedly a real shark. I forwarded all the emails I'd found, the financial records, everything. He confirmed what I already suspected. I had more than enough for an at-fault divorce on the grounds of adultery. But Richard suggested something smarter than just confronting her outright. If you show your hand now, she'll just get defensive and start hiding assets, he said. Better to be strategic about this. Gather more concrete evidence, photos or video, if possible, To document any unusual spending or asset transfers to secure your own finances before making any moves. And most importantly, act normal while doing all of this. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. Once you confront her, the game changes completely. A game, that's what my marriage had become. A game of chess where I needed to anticipate her moves and counter them before she even made them. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. I almost electrocuted myself because I was distracted, thinking about Jessica and Mike planning their new life together while I was busting my ass providing for us. My apprentice, Tommy, actually had to step in and remind me to test the circuit. Kid saved me from a nasty shock. Embarrassing. That night, when Jessica came home late as usual, I forced myself to act normal. I asked about her day, listened to her lies about a stressful client meeting, and even managed to kiss her goodnight without throwing up in my mouth. While she slept, I started making lists on my phone. Assets to protect, accounts to separate, people who needed to know what was happening, and people who didn't. A timeline for how this would all go down. The next morning, I texted her that I might have to go out of town for a big electrical job, a commercial building in Phoenix that needed a complete rewiring. I'd probably be gone for about 2 weeks. I asked if she'd be okay holding down the fort alone. Her response was so enthusiastic it was almost comical. "That's great, babe. Such a good opportunity for you. I'll be fine here. Don't worry about me." I bet you will be, I thought. I bet you will be. The trap was set. Now I just needed to put the rest of my plan in motion. I made a big show of packing, loading my truck with tools, kissing her goodbye. I even stopped by my parents' place on the way out so they'd think I was really leaving. Told them not to mention anything to Jessica if they talked to her. I said I wanted to surprise her with a gift from the money I'd make. Mom thought that was sweet, if she only knew. Once I was clear, I circled back to town and crashed at my buddy Tony's empty rental property about 15 minutes from my house. He's been through his own divorce nightmare, so he got it. I needed eyes on my house, so one of my friends, Kevin, who installs security systems, hooked me up with some discreet outdoor cameras I could monitor from my phone. We set them up when Jessica was at work, one watching the driveway, another on the front door. Nothing inside the house. I'm not that kind of creep, and honestly, didn't want to see what might happen in my own bedroom. The first day was quiet. Jessica came home, ordered food, watched Netflix, sent me some miss you texts that I answered with equally fake enthusiasm. Second day, around 7 p.m., a black Audi pulled up. Out steps Mr. Regional Director himself. Tall, gym body, expensive watch. Catching the streetlight, I could see he brought wine. They stayed until 3 a.m. I got it all on video, the arrival, the way they kissed at the door. Definitely not their first time. How comfortable he looked walking into my house with an overnight bag like he owned the place. Same happened 3 more times that week. Once they left together in the morning, she called in sick while they spent the day, who knows where. They ate dinner on my deck, drank my expensive whiskey I'd been saving. They even took my boat out that I busted my ass to buy. While watching this show, I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I called my dad first, showed him everything. He was pissed but focused. "What's the plan, son?" he asked. "Need to protect what I've built," I told him. The next few days were a blur of preparation. With Richard, my lawyer, we secured my business since it was already an LLC in my name only. I set up new bank accounts, transferred my work equipment to the business name, changed beneficiaries on everything, and stored important documents and irreplaceable stuff off-site. Most importantly, I had papers drawn up giving my dad temporary power of attorney over my business and moved half our savings to my new account, leaving her exactly half, everything above board and documented through my lawyer. By day 10, I had everything I needed: videos, emails, financial records, and a solid legal strategy. Just one more chess move before confrontation. I anonymously sent all the evidence to Mike's pregnant wife. She deserved to know before making life-altering decisions, just like I wished someone had done for me. With that final piece in place, I was ready to head home a day early from my business trip and watch Jessica's face when she saw me. So, I drove home a day early from my Phoenix job, ready for the big confrontation. I had this whole speech prepared in my head, kind of expecting to catch Jessica and Mike in the act, maybe get some more video evidence. But life's full of surprises, ain't it? I pulled into the driveway and noticed something off right away. Her car wasn't there. Weird, since my security cam showed it parked there just 3 hours earlier. Figured maybe she went grocery shopping or something. I walked in, and the house felt empty. You know that feeling when a place that should feel like home suddenly doesn't? The air was different, quieter. I called out her name, nothing. I checked the kitchen, the living room, then headed to our bedroom. And that's when it hit me. Her side of the closet was completely cleared out. Dresser drawers empty. Bathroom counter missing all her expensive creams and makeup. On the bed was a note, folded neatly on my pillow like this was some romantic movie. Alex, I can't do this anymore. I've moved on with someone who matches my ambitions and can give me the life I deserve. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce. Don't try to find me, Jessica. Cold, right? 6 years together, 4 years of marriage, and that's it. 8 lines on a piece of paper, not even a full page. I sat on the edge of the bed, note in hand, feeling nothing. No rage, no heartbreak. Just this weird emptiness, like I was looking at the aftermath of something that had been dead for months, but I just hadn't admitted it yet. I headed to the living room and opened my laptop, pulled up the security footage from earlier that day. There it was. Jessica and Mike loading suitcases and boxes into his Audi around noon. She was laughing as he struggled with a heavy bag, both of them looking excited, like kids sneaking out past curfew. I spent the next few hours making lists. Bank accounts, credit cards, passwords, utilities, all the practical stuff that needs handling when your wife decides to vanish. I changed the locks, changed every password she might know, and called Richard, my divorce lawyer buddy, to get the ball rolling. While checking our accounts, I noticed something interesting. She'd cleared out her personal checking account but hadn't touched our joint savings. Either she forgot in her rush to start her fancy new life, or she was planning to come back for it once things settled. Then it hit me, the safe in my home office. I opened it, and yep, all her important documents were still there. Birth certificate, passport, social security card, everything you need to function as an adult in this country. She'd been in such a hurry to bail that she'd completely forgotten the basics. Stupid. I picked up my phone to text her about it but stopped. Richard's advice came back to me. Don't engage. Don't engage until we have everything in order. Let her make the first mistakes. Instead, I called my dad, explained the situation. He came over quickly. We sat on the deck talking while I transferred half our savings to a new account in my name only, leaving her half in the joint account. I'm not a thief, but I'm not a sucker either. Dad stayed over that night. Good thing too, because around 3 a.m., my phone started blowing up, text after text from Jessica. Just realized I left some important things. Can we arrange a time for me to pick them up? Alex, please respond. This is childish. They're my documents. I need my passport for a new job opportunity. I shut off my phone and went back to sleep. Let her sit with her poor planning for a while. The next day was weirdly normal. I went to work, wired a new construction site, made small talk with my crew. Nobody knew my life had just imploded, and I didn't feel like sharing. I checked my phone at lunch, 27 missed calls, voicemails ranging from sugary sweet to threatening legal action. Mike had even called twice, trying to sound all authoritative about personal property law. I just texted Jessica once. All communication through lawyers from now on. Then I blocked both their numbers and finished my sandwich. 48 hours after Jessica's great escape, I was in the garage reorganizing my tools. What can I say? It's therapeutic. When I heard someone pounding on the front door, I checked my new security app, and there she was, looking considerably less put together than when she left. I laughed my ass off and took my sweet time answering. Found her on the porch, mascara smeared, hair a mess, wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes. You changed the locks? First words out of her mouth, all indignant, like I'd done something wrong. Yep. Didn't invite her in. Just stood in the doorway. I need my things, Alex. My documents. I can't do anything without them. Should have thought about that before you cleared out while I was working. Her face did this thing where she was trying to look sad, but also trying to look attractive while looking sad. It's a weird expression that used to work on me. Not anymore. Can I please come in and get my passport at least? I have a job interview tomorrow. Nope, all items will be exchanged through lawyers. I've already contacted mine. That's when she switched tactics. She started crying, shoulders shaking, the works. Please, I made a mistake. Mike isn't, things aren't what I thought. I just need my documents. Not my problem. You can't legally keep my identification documents. Her voice rising to that shrill tone. Actually, I can. I'll secure them until proper legal exchanges are arranged. They're safe. They'll be returned through appropriate channels. She tried to push past me into the house. I just stepped to the side, blocking the door with my arm. Jessica, you made your choice. You left. This isn't your home anymore. It's my house too. My name is on the mortgage. Might want to check that again. The mortgage is in my name only. The house was purchased with my pre-marriage savings as the down payment, and since you abandoned the residence without notice, you've complicated your claim considerably. Thank you, Richard, for that legal script. Although I felt she didn't quite get what I said, she felt it, because her face showed the exact moment she realized I wasn't the pushover she thought. Where am I supposed to go? Mike's place is complicated. Trouble in paradise already? That was fast. She glared at me. His wife found out somehow, and showed up at his apartment screaming. Had all these emails and videos? Did you have something to do with that? I just shrugged. Sounds like karma to me. I have nowhere to go, Alex. Let me stay here until I figure things out. Just for a few days. I'll sleep on the couch. No. You're being cruel. Full waterworks now. After everything we've been through, it would be leaving someone with a note after 4 years of marriage. Cruel would be screwing your boss in our bed while I was working my ass off providing for us. Cruel would be planning to clean out our accounts once his bonus came through. Her eyes went wide. How did you? I know everything, Jessica. Every email, every plan, every complaint about my lack of While you were falling for his lease car and maxed out credit cards, she crumpled onto the porch steps, sobbing for real this time, not for me, but for her perfect exit strategy falling apart. I almost felt bad. Almost. I'll have Richard contact your lawyer about document exchange. You should go now. I closed the door, watched through the security cam as she sat there crying for another 20 minutes before finally calling her sister to pick her up. Later that night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You had no right to ruin everything. I forwarded it to Richard with one comment. More evidence for the file. I spent the next couple of weeks focusing on work and getting my life together. Had a massive rewiring job for a restaurant downtown that kept me busy. Plus, Richard was putting together our divorce strategy. And yeah, it's been 3 weeks since she showed up crying on the porch. The document exchange finally happened, supervised by both our lawyers at Richard's office. Jessica showed up looking rough. Dark circles under her eyes, wearing clothes I recognized from 2 seasons ago. Guess the fancy shopping sprees were over? She tried to corner me before the meeting. We need to talk privately, Alex. Nothing to say that can't be said in front of the lawyers. Richard was a beast. Had everything organized, documented, ready for signature. Jessica's lawyer looked annoyed the whole time, probably because she kept interrupting him to make emotional appeals directly to me. I made a horrible mistake, she said at one point, reaching for my hand across the table. We could work through this. I moved my hand away. We're here to exchange documents, not reconcile. Her lawyer finally had to tell her to stop because she was making things worse. That seemed to wake her up to the reality of the situation. As we were wrapping up, I found out through Richard that Mike's situation had imploded spectacularly. His pregnant wife, Emma, had filed for divorce with evidence of multiple affairs, not just with Jessica. The company fired both Mike and Jessica for violating policy about manager-employee relationships. He was facing possible legal action from the company for using business trips to conduct his affairs. Jessica had been staying with her sister but wore out her welcome after a week of crying and drama. I also heard that she tried moving in with Mike, but that lasted all of 3 days before reality set in. 2 unemployed people with mounting legal bills in his expensive apartment that turns out he could barely afford when he was employed. Meanwhile, my life's been improving. The business is doing better than ever. Landed 2 major commercial contracts that will keep us busy all year. Bought a new truck, not to show off, but because I actually needed one for work. The divorce is moving quickly. Since Jessica left voluntarily, leaving a written note about moving on with someone else, and there's solid evidence of her affair, it's pretty straightforward. Richard thinks we'll be done in record time. Jessica still tries reaching out occasionally, text from new numbers about how she misses what we had and made the biggest mistake of her life. I don't respond. Nothing left to say. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents in Ohio. And I'm pretty sure that Mike's sleeping on his brother's couch and working at DoorDash to make child support payments. Their grand romance lasted less than a month. In the real world, some of my friends ask if I regret how I handled everything. If I was too harsh or calculated. I tell them the same thing. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when they're planning to screw you over, there's no shame in protecting what you've built. My old man told me something that stuck. In electrical work, you always plan for the worst-case scenario because it only takes one mistake to kill you. Turns out that applies to marriages too. Life's not perfect now, but it's real. And it's mine. Met that chick at the job site the other day. Been grabbing coffee after work a couple of times a week, and I'm already developing feelings for her. Nothing serious yet, but there's something about a woman who can thread a pipe and talk circuit breakers that just works for me. She laughs at my dumb jokes. Lisa thought she's the only woman on earth who laughs at my jokes, and she doesn't look at her phone every 5 seconds when we're together. Crazy how you don't realize what you're missing until you actually have it. No regrets. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, Reddit. You guys helped more than you know. Edit. Holy thanks for the gold. To answer the most common question, no, I won't take Jessica back. Not even if she changes some wires. Once crossed, can't be fixed. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I secretly learned my fiancé's language after his mother insulted me. On our wedding day, I used it in my speech to expose her in front of everyone. I am engaged to a beautiful man. He's not from around here. He came to this nation for college, which is where we met. We were in the same program. He's the kindest and most kind guy I know. He always treats me with such love and respect. I couldn't ask for a better spouse. We get along well, and things are usually rather easy between us. I'm head over heels for him. The issue, and it's a major one, is his mother. She doesn't like me, and that has been clear from the beginning. I've tried to be polite and considerate. I've attempted to get to know her, but nothing seems to work. I believe, and my fiancé concurs, that it is because I am white. His mother wished he would marry someone from their own nation. It's not just that she disapproves. She intentionally makes me feel uncomfortable, which is quite difficult. It puts a strain on things, even if my fiancé and I are content. It's like a perpetual shade over our relationship. The first time I met his parents was a complete mess. We went over to their place for dinner, and his mother snubbed me the moment I came in. I tried to say hi and be nice, but she refused to acknowledge me. It was as if I wasn't even present. My fiancé did his best to involve me in the conversation, but his mother refused to speak with me at all. Despite the fact that I knew she spoke English, she spent the entire evening speaking only in her own tongue to her son and husband. It left me feeling quite uneasy and out of place. My fiancé, and even his father, was uneasy about the whole thing. Dinner itself was really silent and tense. I felt like I was invading a private family moment, despite the fact that I was only supposed to be a visitor. I didn't just feel excluded from the talk. I also felt physically separated from them at the table. To make matters worse, as I reached for one of the plates, she took it away and served it to her husband and kid first, ensuring that I was the last to receive anything. My fiancé was very horrified. He apologized repeatedly on the way home. He kept expressing how awful her behavior was, and how sad he was that I had to go through it. He promised me that if things didn't improve, we would have less contact with her. He didn't even wait for my response before apologizing and defending myself. He appeared to be as upset as I was, if not more so. The entire meeting was unpleasant, and it gave me a good indication of what I was in for. Of course, even after that dreadful first meeting, I had to see his mother on several occasions. It was his birthday, and he wanted to celebrate with his family, including me. I understand how much he loves his family. Each time, I found myself battling my own emotions. I wanted to be there for my spouse, but I was afraid to go. I hoped things would improve, but she remained as cold and disinterested as before. It became a pattern. She would point to my hair, features, or clothes and make comments in her home tongue before laughing. It was clear she was making fun of me. She once pointed at my hair and commented on how it resembled a bird's nest. Then she inquired loudly if I even knew how to care for myself, before laughing again. My fiancé became very defensive and began arguing with her. But when I asked him what she was saying, he simply brushed it off and attempted to change the conversation. Later, he revealed that his mother had made a comment about my huge nose and pale skin. He clearly did not want to repeat the hurtful things she was saying. I felt that I was not only being ostracized, but being picked on, which was quite terrible. It's not like I'm a terrible person. I actually think I'm a very decent catch. I'm not trying to brag, but I am considered attractive. I was the valedictorian of my college class, and I actually have a better earning job than my fiancé. It isn't about the money, but it demonstrates that I am responsible and hardworking. We divide all of our expenses. I offer him nice gifts, and I've even started learning to prepare his favorite cuisines from his native country. I am doing my best to demonstrate my dedication to him. I also actively endeavor to simplify our home life. I do a lot of the housework and errands to show him that I'm a partner in all aspects of life, not just the fun stuff. I really tried to win over his mother as well. I purchased Christmas gifts for both her and his father. I gave them a lot of thought, trying to locate items they could enjoy, but we were never invited to their Christmas festivities. His father is usually kind to me, which I much appreciate. The issue is primarily with his mother. It seems like no matter what I do, it is never enough. I recall giving his mother a very fine scarf, and she looked at it with hatred and threw it away. Later, I overheard her telling someone else that it was cheap and ugly, which matched my tastes. Things like that truly appeal to me. It's not limited to his parents' house. At larger family gatherings, such as parties or weddings, she does the same way. She'll scowl at me from across the room before whispering to other relatives, pointing at and discussing me. If I try to approach her, she simply ignores me and walks away. It's so obvious, yet so degrading. It's not like she's hiding anything. She makes a point of physically turning away from me, letting everyone know that she rejects me. I noticed her at one party complimenting another relative's daughter-in-law, remarking how nice and conventional she was, all while utterly ignoring me. It felt as if she was trying to demonstrate to everyone how much superior this other woman was than me simply because she was from the same nation as them. What's more annoying is that I know she speaks English fluently. She is a kindergarten teacher, therefore she has to. She purposefully speaks in her native language to exclude me, making me feel like an outsider in my own fiancé's family. It's as if she utilizes language barriers as a weapon. I recognized that if I truly wanted to connect with my fiancé on a deeper level, I needed to better grasp his culture, including his language. I wanted to be able to share that aspect of his life with him. I figured it would bring us closer. I chose to study his original language. I intended to keep it a secret from him. I anticipated surprise him one day by engaging in a lengthy conversation in his language. I wanted to see the expression on his face. I wanted him to know how much I cared. So I truly dedicated to studying the language. I spent 5 months working on it virtually every day. I looked up every resource I could find online, including YouTube videos and language study programs. I practiced speaking aloud, hoping to get the pronunciation correct. I focused on being able to hold a conversation rather than just acquiring a few phrases here and there. My major motivation was to communicate with and surprise my fiancé. But, to be fully honest, a part of me wanted to know exactly what his mother was saying about me. And, well, I began to understand. It wasn't easy, but after a few months, I was able to understand more of what Mom was saying at family events or when she thought I wasn't listening. I pretended I didn't comprehend anything around her. I just stayed quiet and listened. And what did I hear? It was devastating. It was far worse than I had imagined. All the little comments, murmurs, and laughing were so cruel and intimate. I recall when my fiancé informed his mother that we were engaged. We were in the car, and he had her on loudspeaker. She instantly began ranting about how he was marrying a white woman and how their ancestors would be rolling in their graves. The phrase rolling in their graves made me feel as if I was doing something wrong just by existing. It felt greater than just her dislike for me, like I was going against years of tradition. She stated she was having trouble accepting me. Then she said that if he had to marry a white lady, she wished he had selected someone more homely. She claimed I was too modern to be a decent mother. My fiancé, of course, defended me, but she would not stop. She acknowledged as much. She'll probably raise our grandchildren to be spoiled and disrespectful, unlike children raised in our culture. She's completely unfit to be a mother in our family. That one really hurt. Later, when we went to see his parents to start talking about wedding plans, his father was overjoyed for us. You could feel it on his face. But what about his mother? She was as disapproving as always. While we were there, she began ranting in her own language at my fiancé and his father. But this time, I got everything. She was wishing my fiancé would reconsider the marriage, claiming that an astrologer had foretold a black hole in the family because of me, and that I was infertile. She began fussing about how many of my white relatives would attend the wedding and even recommended removing people from my guest list. My fiancé declined, and they had a heated disagreement. I just stood there, crushed, and knew exactly what she was saying. To top it all off, she lied to my father-in-law, stating I had been bragging about how much more money I made than my fiancé, in an attempt to make me appear terrible. It was all so unfair and untrue. I thought wedding dress shopping may be a good bonding experience, so I invited my future mother-in-law, as well as my mother and sister to join me. I was hoping it would be an opportunity for us to connect and have a good day together. It proved to be anything but that. She was terrible. She made a critical comment about every dress I tried on. She'd roll her eyes, make passive-aggressive comments, and basically make me feel bad. What is the worst part? When I discovered a dress that I simply adored, I felt lovely wearing it. My mother and sister were in tears, telling me how beautiful I looked. What about my potential mother-in-law? She simply looked at me and exclaimed in her native language that it was horrible. I completely understood her. My mother and sister were swooning over me, telling me how beautiful I looked, while his mother kept picking on every dress. It was such a striking contrast. I was surrounded by affection, but I could feel daggers being flung my way. And it wasn't just what she said, but how she said it. She was deliberately attempting to destroy a good time for me. I walked to the restroom briefly, and while I was gone, she began insulting my body in front of my sister. She remarked the clothes didn't fit me well and made other disparaging remarks. I tried to keep it together. However, I ended up crying in the dressing room. It wasn't just sadness, it was fury, frustration, and everything. All of my efforts to be kind seemed to be in vain. It was a moment when I felt absolutely defeated. I kept questioning myself why I was even trying. After that day at the dress shop, I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I couldn't keep letting her abuse me like this. But I didn't want to just yell at her or start a fight. I wanted something more meaningful. I wanted her to understand how much she had hurt me. So I started thinking about the wedding, and then I got this thought. What if I embarrassed her in front of everyone? I understand it sounds horrible. But after everything she'd put me through, I felt I deserved to give her a taste of her own medicine. I intended to punish her once and for all. But then I started to question myself. I'm going to you, Reddit. Would I be the a-hole if I went ahead with this? Update 1. Wow. Thank you very much for your comments and recommendations. I sincerely appreciate all of the encouragement and humor. It's made me feel a lot less alone in this circumstance. I wanted to clarify a few points based on some of the comments I've seen. First and foremost, I want to make it clear that my fiancé has always stood up for me. He's been tremendously helpful since the beginning. He confronts his mother when she is disrespectful, and he always comforts me when I am unhappy. He is genuinely my rock, and I could not ask for a greater companion. I want everyone to know that he is completely on my side in all of this. He's not enabling her conduct. He's actively opposing it. What about my potential mother-in-law? I suppose the simplest way to characterize her is as a cruel old woman. I don't believe she is particularly racist in a wide sense. I believe she has an issue with me specifically. It is personal. She wanted her son to marry someone from her own background, and I didn't fit the bill. I want to make it obvious that all of this is coming from her. It is not a reflection of her culture or community. I've read requests to report her to the school where she works, but I'm not going to do so. I do not want to ruin her career. I might be furious and hurt, but I don't want to get to that level. Her issue is with me specifically, and it is not fair to punish her professionally for something that occurred in our personal lives. I just want to deal with this situation directly and without inflicting any needless damage. Update 2. Hello again, everyone. I'm writing from my honeymoon. We're blissfully married. I wanted to give you all an update because I've received so many messages and requests. We've been celebrating our love and, let's just say, a little sweet revenge. The wedding day has finally arrived. Everything was gorgeous, and I was overjoyed to be marrying the love of my life. When it came time to deliver speeches, I decided to try something unusual. I began in English, thanking all of our friends and families for being there to celebrate our momentous day. Then, I switched to my husband's native tongue. You should have seen the expressions on everyone's faces, particularly my husband and his family. They were completely shocked. I could see my husband's eyes tear up. I thanked his family in their native language for welcoming me, though in my mother-in-law's case, this wasn't quite true at the moment. But I was building toward something. I explained to them that studying their language was my wedding gift to my husband, a way for me to show him how much I loved him and cherished his culture. He was so moved that he came over and kissed me in the middle of his speech. Then I focused my attention on his father. I thanked him again, in his original tongue, for his generosity and genuine warmth. And then I turned to face my mother-in-law. I thanked her sarcastically for her rejection. I told everyone, in her own tongue, about all of the insults, attempts to exclude me, and nasty things she had said and done. I told them about the heinous insult she made regarding my wedding outfit. I explained how she informed everyone that I was infertile. I could see her face growing redder and redder. She was obviously embarrassed. I continued. I also want to publicly address the false claim my mother-in-law made about me bragging about my income. I replied that this was a pure fiction, intended to make me appear bad in front of her family. She was complete rubbish and a piece of garbage that had been picked up from a dumpster. After discussing the specifics of what my mother-in-law had done, I extended the message. Still speaking in her own tongue, I stated that skin color and ethnicity should not be considered when it comes to love. I emphasized how much effort I had put into learning their language and adopting my husband's culture since it was vital to me to be involved in all aspects of his life. Then I explained how my mother-in-law's behavior, her isolation and degrading remarks, had only served to widen the distance. I looked at her straight and calmly warned her that if her behavior persisted, she would have no access to any future children we might have. I made it clear that I would not tolerate my children being subjected to such hatred and discrimination. My hubby was really proud of me. He subsequently told me that he had never felt greater love for me than in that moment, when I stood up for myself and our future. I simply ignored my mother-in-law for the remainder of the evening. I did not want to satisfy her with any more replies. She, on the other hand, was visibly enraged. She began arguing with my father-in-law and husband. Eventually, she stormed away. My husband stated he was confident she would think twice about disrespecting me again. But the nicest part was the reaction of other relatives. Many of them approached me afterwards, complimenting my language skills and expressing how thoughtful it was of me to learn their language. They told me how much this meant to them. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. That I was a true member of the family. I thoroughly loved the remainder of the wedding and had a strong sense of empowerment. I believe I proved my point and received the vengeance I sought. I felt as if a big weight had been lifted. Update 3. Hello again, everyone. We just returned from our honeymoon, and I had a lot of voicemails from my mother-in-law. My husband indicated he would support anything I decided to do, whether I called her back or ignored her entirely. Honestly, my first thought was to ignore the calls. I was still upset and angry, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared to talk to her. But, after some thought, I decided to give her one last shot. I called her back, and we decided to meet. When I saw her, she appeared different. She was nervous and appeared apologetic. Then, for the first time, she issued an official apology. She stated that she was really angry after the wedding, specifically after my speech, but that she had some time to contemplate. She stated that a number of relatives had called her out on her behavior, which made her realize how terribly she had acted. She stated that she had treated me harshly and unfairly. She recognized that I had made a genuine attempt to embrace their culture, learning the language and all. She made no particular apologies for the worst things she had said, such as calling my clothing awful or claiming I was infertile. That bit was somewhat skimmed over, which I noticed. But it was a general apology, and it appeared honest. She added that my husband is her only kid and that she has always been quite protective of him. She stated that she had always imagined him marrying someone from their home country, and that she struggled to accept me since I did not fit her expectations. She apologized for making me feel uncomfortable and pledged to be more tolerant. I calmly listened to what she said before accepting her apology. I told her I wanted to move on and try to improve our relationship. I admired her candor and willingness to attempt to change. However, I made it plain that I had some doubts. It's not like everything is instantaneously fine now. This is more of a cautious step forward, and while I'm hopeful she'll change, I'm not completely persuaded. After the apology, we actually began talking, albeit in her native tongue. She told me stories of my husband when he was a little boy, and it felt good, like we were finally connecting, perhaps for the first time. I could tell she was trying, so I decided to try too. There were still some little issues, such as her avoidance of staring me directly in the eye for too long, which suggested she wasn't totally at ease yet. Then there was one time when I prepared supper and she tried to compliment me, but it came off as a little backhanded. She said, "This dish is actually quite good, for a white person's attempt. It's almost as good as how we make it." It was better than an insult, I suppose, but it still had a sting to it. I understand that this upgrade may not meet everyone's expectations. Some of you undoubtedly wanted me to cut her off totally or continue the feud, but I believe I made my point at the wedding. I stood up for myself and told her, in front of everyone, that her actions were unacceptable. Right now, all I want is a drama-free family life. I want to move forward with enthusiasm and give this a genuine shot to be a new beginning. I believe her own family's reaction was what finally convinced her to rethink her mind. She claimed that many relatives called her after the wedding to tell her she was in the wrong. I believe she eventually recognized how biased and unfair she had been. But, and this is key, I understand how difficult it is to break old habits. I am giving her the benefit of the doubt. I am willing to try, but one incorrect move, one return to old rudeness, and the truce will be broken. I will not hesitate to defend myself again if necessary. I hope for the best. We'll see how this goes. My spouse and I deserve to live happy and tranquil lives, therefore let us pray for that. So, that is where things stand. My mother-in-law and I had a heart-to-heart and are ready to try to start over. I will keep you all updated. I have big news for everyone. I am pregnant. My husband and I are very pleased to begin this new chapter in our life. We can't wait to meet our little one. And I am pleased to say that my relationship with my mother-in-law has continued to improve. Our relationship has undergone a significant positive adjustment. She is a lot more accepting and friendly to me now. She genuinely spends time with me, offers to help with things, and even gives me advice, some of it unsolicited, of course, but I'll accept it. I attempt to reciprocate by being understanding and upfront with her. Both my mother and mother-in-law have been wonderful. They both check in on me on a frequent basis to ensure that everything is going well. They've even worked together to help us set up the baby's nursery. It's lovely to see them bond like that. We actually feel like we're forming one huge, joyful family. However, there are still small reminders that things are not perfect. We were talking about baby names the other day, and I suggested a few that I thought were cute. My mother-in-law scoffed and said, "Those sound so American, wouldn't you want something a little more cultured?" It was a minor remark disguised as a suggestion, but it still hurt a little. It's as if those old biases are still present, just below the surface. My husband continues to be extremely supportive. He's relieved to see his mother making an effort, and he's as excited about the baby as I am. What about my father-in-law? He has been wonderful. He's building a baby rocker for the nursery and has already promised to build a treehouse for the little one when they grow up. I am deeply grateful for his love and support. Overall, things are significantly better than they were before. I'm optimistic about the future and hope that my relationship with my mother-in-law will continue to improve. I'm looking forward to a future full of love, and hopefully, no more drama. Everyone seems to be in a much better mood right now. We're very excited about our little one. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My husband was manipulated by his mother and demanded a paternity test for our child. I agreed, but my mother-in-law tampered with the results. I, 28F, have been with my spouse, Mark, 30M, name changed for privacy, for 6 years and married for the past 2. I'll start with some backstory. My mother-in-law has never been the nicest person to me, but I usually ignored it, especially in the start of our relationship. I was young and naive, and I imagined that mother-in-laws behaved similarly with their sons. When I was 16, I moved out of my family's house and haven't had much contact with them since. So I didn't have any perspective on what a healthy family looked like. I guess the events of the last few weeks have been building up for a while, and now I'm completely lost. I don't know what to do. For reference, when I first met my husband's parents, we were all out to dinner. His mother appeared kind enough at first, but throughout the dinner, she kept making comments that were targeted and underhanded. So, do you have a job of your own, or do you just live off Mark's money? Have you ever considered losing weight? You have such a pretty face. I think you would be stunning if you were a little slimmer. You're a great girl, but I just don't think I could ever find anyone good enough for my baby boy. I understand, I ignored every possible red flag. But, in my defense, I was deeply in love with this guy. She constantly said these things in a nice, humorous tone, and I didn't want to overreact. For the first several years of our relationship, she frequently made small, underhanded comments about my weight, appearance, or the idea that I was dating Mark for his money. The trouble is, we both work in the same field and earn nearly the same amount. While he earns slightly more than I do, it is far from enough to justify gold digging. At first, the things she said bothered me, so I took them up with Mark. He repeatedly told her to quit making comments like that. But, because it was never anything excessive, he dismissed them, stating that because he is her only kid, Mom is a little clingy. We also didn't see his parents very much because we were both busy at work and lived about an hour away. When he proposed to me, things quickly escalated. I won't go into too much detail, but my mother-in-law made our engagement and wedding difficult. When we invited his parents to supper to announce our engagement, his mother broke down when she saw the diamond. She asked Mark how much it cost and flushed bright red when he told her. I understand that it may appear to be a lot to others, but we both work in a lucrative industry and are financially blessed. The price was reasonable for him. Still, she informed him that I didn't deserve such a costly ring and that he had never purchased her anything that expensive, something she thought she deserved as his mother. She also stated that she did not believe he was serious about me after we had been dating for 3 years. Mark urged her not to be crazy and left it at that, but supper was destroyed, and everyone left shortly thereafter. His mother did not speak to him for 3 weeks after that. Later, she sent him an apology, stating she was afraid of losing her little man. During the wedding planning, my mother-in-law attempted to tamper with the guest list and vendors. And yes, she wore a white dress to my wedding. Mark supported me throughout this. We had passwords for all of the vendors, and he had his mom change them. Our first year of marriage was wonderful. We wanted to have a family and started trying for a baby right away. However, everything changed when I became pregnant at the end of last year. We surprised my in-laws at their house with a small gift basket including champagne, chocolate, and a tiny plaque that read Grandma. When they opened it and realized what was going on, my mother-in-law looked at me and said, "You sure it's my baby? Mark's, right?" I was astonished, but she smiled and behaved as if it were a joke, and the evening went on. That's when she started making a lot of comments about my weight. "You've really put on a few pounds, haven't you? Be careful, or your husband's eyes might start to wander." I stayed thin during my whole pregnancy with Mark. "You should really stop being so lazy and put effort into looking good for my baby, Mark." She also mentioned women she knew who had misidentified another man's child as their husband's. It always felt like she was after me. She even joked about how she wished I wouldn't do something like that, implying that I cheated. I despised these statements and constantly requested her not to make them. She would dismiss it, adding, "You take things too seriously, can't you take a joke?" Then she brought up Lauren, 30F, Mark's ex from high school. She would talk about Lauren's skinny and petite figure and how she matched Mark better because they were both athletic. These comments, along with pregnancy hormones, caused me to cry several times. At first, Mark would yell at his mother to stop talking to me in that manner, which only irritated her more. But about the 4th or 5th month, he became distant. He started visiting his mother more frequently without me and would come over on weekends, even when I begged him to remain because I was sick or in agony. Around my 5th month, he stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings before work, hugging or caressing me at home, and expressing no emotion at all. I was completely confused. But whenever I asked him what was wrong, he became irritated and told me I was acting clingy and annoying, or that he was just tired. He even indicated that I was acting crazy due to my pregnancy hormones. I let it go and tried to concentrate on myself and my kid, but I was sure my mother-in-law was bugging him about it. When my baby was born 1 month ago, my mother-in-law insisted on being present in the delivery room. I didn't want her there. But Mark claimed if I didn't allow her to come, he wouldn't be there for me either. At this point, I was so emotionally and physically weary that I caved in and let her stay. Although my labor was long and complicated, holding my kid was the sweetest moment of my life. I'd do it all again for him. Then, just after they cleaned him up and returned him to me, Mark went to me and said, "I want a paternity test." I was shocked. I assumed it was a prank at first. But he was serious. I was really perplexed and kept asking why. I'd never cheated on anyone or given him cause to believe I had. My job was remote, and he had to go into the office, so I was practically constantly at home. My pregnancy was very challenging, therefore I didn't have the opportunity or time to have an affair. He kept stressing that he wanted to be sure the baby was his and that he didn't want to pay for some other man's child. Hearing him say such things about our baby broke my heart. I consented to take the paternity test because I had nothing to conceal. 3 weeks ago, we received the results. As you might expect based on the headline, the results were negative. I thought there had to be a mistake, but Mark refused to even look at me. He packed his belongings and left for his mother's place, leaving me home alone with a 2-week-old newborn. I called repeatedly, but he didn't answer. I texted him, saying there had to be a mistake and suggesting another test, but he did not respond. He eventually called me 1 week ago. By this point, I was a wreck and all I needed was help with my baby. Instead of offering any comfort, he remarked, "My mother was correct. I can't believe I married a woman like you." That's when everything clicked. What did he mean when he said his mom was right? At that point, I was certain she had told him lies about me having an affair, being immoral, or something equally ridiculous. I decided to phone my mother-in-law yesterday because Mark no longer responded to my messages. When she answered, I told her I needed to speak with Mark and that he couldn't just abandon me with a 1-week-old kid after all of the issues I experienced throughout pregnancy and labor. She smiled and told me he wasn't home, and that I earned what I received. That was it. I was finished. I was done with the entire family by this time. I had my baby to think about, and I was not going to let them walk all over him like they had done to me. I was not going to put up with my mother-in-law's nonsense longer. I replied, "I don't know what you think of me, but I never cheated." The test was wrong. That was the turning point. She laughed again and informed me that she already knew. Then she acknowledged that she had submitted the incorrect sample to ensure that the results were negative, because, in her words, I did not deserve her kid, Mark. She refused to let me baby trap him. She went even further. "He will never believe you or put some woman over his own mother, so just let it go." I was stunned. For a minute, I was unable to answer. Then she went on a big rant about how she always wanted Mark to be with someone good enough for him, someone who matched him in appearance. She mentioned Lauren again, stating how much she missed her and how Mark should recognize that she was the one he was meant to be with. The paternity test was simply a ploy to encourage him to leave me so she could find him a suitable companion. I hung up. Since then, I've been numb. I can't believe a real grown-up would act like this. That gets me to where I am now. I texted Mark right after and told him what she had said. I advised him to ask her himself. I'm not sure where to proceed from here. Should I have another paternity test? I'm thinking of hiring a lawyer, but I don't want to make things any more complicated. Should I even take him back if he decides he wants to return? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Update. One quick update for everyone who asked. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who responded and offered suggestions. I honestly didn't anticipate so many people to see this. I went to bed last night after finishing this post and awoke to 900 comments. I read them all, but I won't be able to respond to everyone, so I'll answer a few questions here. As I mentioned in my essay, I am not connected to my family and have not spoken to my parents in years. They did not attend my wedding, and I do not believe they are aware of or concerned about my baby. My family is from Minnesota, but I came to the East Coast after leaving my parents' house. I supported myself through school and college by working various jobs, met Mark in college, and have been working remotely since. I don't have many friends locally, and my family is out of the question. I'll call my coworker Katie, F., who lives close, and we occasionally text. I informed Katie a little about what was going on, and she was kind enough to offer to come over and support me. When she arrived at my place, I was a wreck. I hadn't showered in a week, the house was a mess, and my 2-week-old newborn was wailing in my arms. I burst into tears because I was so relieved to see her. Which was awkward because we weren't even close. But she was incredible. She inquired what was going on, and I couldn't even explain. So I just showed her the original post. Katie has been a sweetheart. She's been minding my son while I clean up, eat some proper food, and take my first hot shower in 2 weeks. She's also been a rock for me right now and is outraged on my behalf. To be honest, it feels great to finally have someone on my side. That's it for now. Several of you inquired about my father-in-law. I never mentioned him because he isn't very talkative. I'm not sure what he thinks of me, but he's always been kind to me and normally overlooks my mother-in-law. I'm also not sure why my mother-in-law dislikes me so much, but it's not because of ethnicity or religion, as some of you have stated. We are all white and not religious. I believe it's because I'm a bit of a big girl and rather tall, but Mark is really fit and enjoys working out at the gym. I'm not big or unhealthy, I exercise regularly, but I'm not as small as my mother-in-law or some of Mark's ex-partners. That is my best guess. Honestly. I'm also planning to contact a lawyer today. At this point, I don't think I'll ever look at Mark in the same way again. I know I want a divorce. I had already screenshotted as many chats as possible, both with my mother-in-law and with Mark, just in case this happened. I'll also acquire another paternity test and give him the results as I serve him with divorce papers. He hasn't responded to my texts yet, and at this point, I do not care. I don't want my son to have a father like him. I'm outraged that he didn't even talk to me before departing me and his son. I don't even want him around anymore. Update number 2. Hello everyone, it's been a pretty hectic couple of months, and I've had numerous comments and private messages requesting an update. So I figured I'd catch everyone up. It's been 2 months since my previous post. Mark returned home about 2 days after I posted my first update. By that point, I had cleaned myself and the house, thanks to Katie, and had contacted with a lawyer about divorce proceedings. Mark arrived early in the morning, looking utterly dreadful. Unshaven. His eyes appeared as if he'd been crying for 3 days. I was not expecting him. We stood there in quiet for a bit before he sobbed and apologized. I know I claimed I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, but seeing him stand in front of me was difficult. I'd loved this man for 6 years, and it was difficult to let go of everything. Hearing him apologize felt wonderful too. I allowed him in, and we sat in the living room while I held my baby. He kept crying. Eventually, he begged to hold his son. The wrath from the previous few days returned, and I said no. He simply nodded and let it go. After gathering his thoughts, he asked if we could talk. I consented because I wanted to know what he had to say. Thank you to a commenter here, I remembered to record the chat on my phone. The truth comes out. He didn't want to believe it when I texted him what his mother had told me, but it continued bothering him. Finally, he chose to confront her. Of course, she denied it, telling him that I was attempting to baby trap him for money and isolate him from his family. However, my father-in-law had had enough of his insane wife at that point, and he told Mark everything. It appears that one of my mother-in-law's nephews worked at the lab where the paternity test was sent. She persuaded him to switch the results. Mark stated that it felt as if his entire universe had fallen in that moment, because he recognized what a lousy husband and father he had been up to this point. What a manipulative bitch his mother was. To be honest, hearing that made me feel amazing. But it was not the end. The scope of her manipulation. His mother then attempted to defend herself by claiming that I was too large and womanly for her ideal, handsome son. She wanted him to divorce me and reunite with his ex since, in her opinion, she was prettier and more suitable for him. She also despised the fact that he was paying me and our baby too much attention, because it was taking precious time away from her. Things become worse. When he came over to her place during my 4th month, one of the occasions I was unable to go, she invited his ex, Lauren. She convinced Mark that I had been aloof and irritated because I was having an affair and forcing him to raise another man's child. Lauren, who was petite and, admittedly, very attractive, flirted with him at every opportunity. And Mark acknowledged falling for his mother's deception. He began seeing Lauren behind my back. Because he enjoyed feeling wanted. As I struggled with my pregnancy, he was the one having the affair. He stated they never slept together, only dated and kissed and such. As if that makes things better. He claimed he called it off the week before I went into labor due to remorse. Then, after telling me everything, he pleaded for forgiveness. He stated that he will go to any length to resolve the situation. That if it came to it, he would remove his mother from our life for good. And for a brief while, it seemed tempting. I almost gave in. Then I glanced at my son. And I remembered everything he had put me through over the past year. How he never established boundaries with his mother. How he engaged in an affair. How he abandoned me when I was most vulnerable. I informed him that with everything that had happened during my pregnancy and after our son was born, it simply wasn't feasible. I no longer saw him the same way, and I had lost trust in him. He cried some more before agreeing to arrange a motel nearby. I also informed him I wanted to take a true paternity test again. He protested, but I insisted. So the test was scheduled for the very next day, the results and divorce. 2 weeks later, the results were returned. Wouldn't you know it? He's the father? Cue more crying from him. Is it awful that I felt vindicated? Last week, the divorce papers were finally drafted, and I served him. After 2 months of agony, he was a wreck and attempted to recommend couples counseling before making any major decisions. But I was really done with him. I requested a 50-50 asset distribution and primary custody, which my lawyer believes will be readily granted given the facts I have of Mark's behavior toward our baby. Mark will get supervised visits on weekends, and his mother will not be permitted around my child. Mark stated that he will not challenge me on the terms, out of guilt. And honestly, rightly so. Father-in-law steps in. My father-in-law contacted me the day Mark was served to apologize for not stepping in sooner. I forgive him. From what I've heard, he's always been a laid-back man, and Mark has also stated that he is likely to leave his wife. What about my mother-in-law? I don't know anything about her anymore. She's been blocked since the day Mark arrived at my door. Moving forward, I'll be moving out of our flat. While I am heartbroken and overwhelmed by how my marriage ended, I am also hopeful for the future. So that's what's been going on recently. I probably won't update for a bit. It's time to focus on myself and my son. I'd simply like to thank everyone who offered advice and support. I'm quite appreciative. I probably wouldn't have gotten this far without it. Update 3. Wow, I had forgotten about this account. It's been a year since my previous post. I deleted Reddit off my phone and sort of forgot about it. This will be a brief update for those who wish to know. Current situation. My divorce is set to be finalized next month. Mark abruptly decided that he no longer wanted to give me majority custody or supervised visits, so the proceedings took a while. But my attorney was a beast. With the tapes I have of his admission regarding his behavior throughout and after my pregnancy, I have a good chance of getting what I want. My baby is now 14 months old and the loveliest little boy. We moved across the state to a charming little apartment. Thanks to my job, I can spend most of my time with him. I've also begun going out more and joined a book club, so I've definitely met some new people here. The divorce, relocation, and attempting to raise my son on my own have all been difficult. But, really? I feel so much better without Mark and his witch of a mother ruining my life. I should have recognized the warning signs from the start, when this man repeatedly prioritized his mother before his own pregnant wife. But you live and learn. And I will not make that mistake again. What's next? I'm not sure if I'm ready for a relationship again. But, for the time being, all I want to do is be as present as possible with my son. I don't think I'll be updating again, but I'd like to add that I'm in a much better place than I was last year. And I thank everyone who has wished me well.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
I found out my child is my brother's. I decided to divorce. My parents begged me to stay silent because my father-in-law invests in their company. I, 28M, have been married for 3 years, and my wife Jade, 26F, and I have been together for 6 years. We had our first child a few months ago, but I only recently discovered that the baby is my brother's biological child. My brother Grant, 32 million, had been having an affair with Jade for the previous 3 years. It began just a few weeks after our wedding, and I had no idea until a few weeks ago. To be honest, I had been having trouble connecting emotionally with the infant for some reason. I had been feeling like a bad father because I didn't feel very attached to my own child. I still don't understand why that was happening. Maybe it was just a gut feeling. One night, I was discussing this with Jade, and I burst into tears because I felt so guilty. Instead of soothing me, she began sobbing uncontrollably. That's when the full truth came out. She agreed that it wasn't my fault that I didn't feel connected to the baby wasn't mine. She had already received the paternity test results but chose not to inform me. She said the affair ended shortly after she discovered she was pregnant and that she and Grant had no contact with each other anymore. She wanted to focus on me and our marriage. But once she told me the truth, it was too late. I started packing right away and went, despite the fact that it was late at night. Since then, I have been staying at a hotel. Jade attempted to stop me. She was quite furious, but I just left. I even blocked her, so she couldn't reach me. Since then, this has drained a lot of my emotional energy. For the first few days, I couldn't process what was going on. I did not even inform my parents about it. But they found out, thanks to Jade and Grant. Instead of comforting me, they called, said they knew everything, and then began telling me that whatever had happened was in the past. They claimed that Jade had made a mistake, but as her husband, I had to forgive her, put everything else aside, and focus on our family and our marriage. I had no concept what they meant by family, because the infant was not mine. It was ludicrous of them to advise that I raise the baby as a father and stay with Jade despite everything. I believed they were insane, but my dad eventually told me the reality. Apparently, this was merely a commercial transaction for my parents. My father-in-law intended to invest in my father's failing logistics business in order to restore it. My father-in-law runs numerous established enterprises and is financially secure. I knew my parents were always impressed with the family I married into, but I never imagined it would mean so much to them. Apparently, this investment has been in the works for quite some time, and they intended to surprise us with it in a few weeks once everything was finalized. However, divorcing Jade would have a negative impact on their personal ties. They were concerned that my father-in-law would reconsider investing in the firm. According to my parents, my father sorely needed this money to keep his firm running. That's why they wanted me to suck it up, remain silent, and not make a big fuss about it. They wanted me to pretend everything was fine, raise my brother's child as if it were my own, and forgive my unfaithful wife, all in order to complete their commercial agreement. I was so horrified, I hung up and blocked them. Then, just for good measure, I started looking for a lawyer right away. As soon as I met someone suitable, I filed for divorce. Jade was served approximately 3 days ago. On the same day, I decided to contact my parents, in-laws, every business acquaintance of my father that I knew, a couple of employees in my father's firm, a few family friends, and some cousins to inform them of my current predicament. It took me a few hours to get everyone's email addresses, but once I did, I notified them all about my wife cheating on me with my brother. I also confessed that my parents had encouraged me to remain silent and pretend everything was normal so that they might acquire an investment. Then I sent an email. Now, my folks are inundating my phone with emails, SMS, and phone calls from numerous numbers and accounts. They are really furious about what I have done since, of course, they will no longer receive that investment. On top of that, they have lost their reputation. They want me to apologize, as if that will resolve everything. They also inform me that Jade is distraught and has been diagnosed with postpartum depression, suggesting that my actions will only make matters worse. She is really miserable, and they are attempting to make me feel bad. But, honestly, I don't feel awful about anything. I think they earned it. So, am I the asshole for exposing the truth about my wife and parents, embarrassing them in public? Edit. Okay, I see there are a lot of questions concerning Grant, his relationship with Jade and me, and other things. So I will address that. Grant and I had a fairly normal connection, as most brothers do. The entire event was totally unexpected. We haven't spoken once since finding out. Grant had an apparently typical connection with Jade. I never suspected there was anything going on between them. Furthermore, Grant had always been a loner who had no interest in sticking with one woman for an extended period of time. His job forced him to travel frequently, and aside from that, he was spontaneous and always on the go, completely unlike me. From what I understood, he was never Jade's type, either in appearance or demeanor. So, obviously, none of this made sense to me. Jade informed me that they just started hooking up after we got married, and it ended when she discovered she was pregnant. She might be saying the truth or not. But, even then, I saw nothing strange. They were just very excellent at concealing it. Whatever it was, I always assumed they were only friendly with each other. I'm not exactly sure why Jade cheated on me. When she was attempting to persuade me to stay and justifying herself, she mentioned how I overworked at the beginning of our marriage. I had just started working because I did not want to continue my father's business. I knew I needed to work hard if I wanted to advance. Sure, some may say I was serious about my profession, but I never overworked or carried my work home with me. I believe she was just bored and wanted an excuse to meet up with someone else, which is exactly what she did. Any other reason she provides is only an attempt to rationalize her behavior because she does not want to recognize that this was totally her fault. That is pretty much all I know about Grant and his relationship with Jade. Update 1. Thank you all for your comments and support. It means a lot to me, especially given my current situation. Everyone hates me, whether it's my parents or my in-laws, because they believe I embarrassed them by informing so many people about what Jade did, including those who didn't need to know. It's been a few days, and I've spent every second either drowning in work at the office or returning to the hotel and deleting the innumerable texts and emails my parents continue to send me from various accounts. They are absolutely relentless. They're simply not going to quit. I try blocking them, but they keep creating new accounts and numbers. I'm not even sure why they're going to such extremes. The damage is already done. My apologies will not change the reality, nor will they become more respectable. My in-laws reached out to me a few days ago. They explained that my email was entirely unnecessary. They discovered who else I had emailed it to and accused me of sending it to a group of individuals my parents knew solely to disgrace them. However, they allege that because I did so, Jade was also humiliated. I don't understand why I should feel awful about that. That woman literally cheated on me with my brother and was content to let me believe the baby was mine, enabling me to raise my brother's child as my own, until she broke down that night. She did something disgusting. She completely earned this. I didn't bother responding to my in-laws since I really just want to move on from this. I'm currently waiting for Jade's lawyer to react to the divorce filing. In my opinion, I've been quite fair, and I just hope she doesn't complain about anything. As for the baby, it isn't mine, so I won't be donating anything. I might be the father mentioned on the birth certificate, but that makes no difference to me. I don't detest the baby or anything. In fact, the baby is the only fully innocent individual in the whole affair. I honestly feel horrible for him because he will pay the price for his parents' misdeeds. Even still, it is not my job to care for a child who is not biologically mine, especially if the real father is my brother. If Jade brings up anything regarding the kid, I already know I'm not going to accept responsibility. I'm basically ready for every potential circumstance because I have no idea what to expect right now. I haven't spoken to Jade since I left, and I don't want to ever speak to her again. I know she is unhappy right now, enough people have told me so. Even as I was leaving, I could tell she was really sad. I just hope her pain doesn't lead her to believe she can dispute the divorce and convince me to stay, because that will never happen. At all costs. I will do whatever it takes to get out of this circumstance. In the meantime, I'm hoping she doesn't drag this out and make things much more difficult than they currently are. Please keep me in your prayers, and I hope she does not oppose the divorce and make matters worse for everyone concerned. She still has a few days to respond, so I'm praying she makes the correct decision. Update 2. Hello everyone, it's been a week since my last update, and today I finally received a response from Jade and her lawyer. Fortunately, she is not opposing the divorce. But now there's another issue. She has provided a child custody agreement, insisting that I step forward as the biological father. She even wrote a statement stating that because I am included on the birth certificate, even though I am not the biological father, I have been involved in the baby's life for the past few months and must accept responsibility, whether I like it or not. It was infuriating. The name on the birth certificate is meaningless in comparison to the paternity test findings. So I immediately contacted my lawyer, and we decided to proceed with disestablishing paternity. That way, I can be legally released from all obligations for the infant. Until the legal process is completed, I will be presumed to be the legal father. But the infant is just 4 months old, so I don't believe it will matter too much. I'm still optimistic that the procedure will be done shortly. My lawyer promised me that the process would not be difficult. Given the baby's age, my absence is unlikely to have any effect on him. He'll most likely forget that I ever existed in his life. It would have been a much bigger problem if I had discovered it later, when he was older. But for now, everything should be good. To be honest, I'm pleased I found out when I did. If this had occurred later, I'm not sure how difficult it would have been to deal with, especially emotionally. I might have developed a bond to the baby, making things even more confusing. I am also relieved that I was unable to bond with the baby at first. I had read about it online and discovered that many new parents face similar challenges, so I hoped that with time, I would bond with the baby like a normal father. But now I thank God that didn't happen. The remorse I felt for not connecting with him prompted me to confess it to Jade, revealing the truth. If I had bonded with the infant, I might not have found out. That is the only silver lining in this whole mess. Another source of relief is that, in recent days, my parents have finally decided to back off, at least temporarily. I'm not sure what their future plans are, but happily, they haven't texted or bothered me. It has just been radio silence. Now that I've had some time to evaluate my future, I'm thinking about moving out of the hotel and into an apartment near my workplace. At the moment, all I want to do is work and sleep. Of course, I can't remain at a hotel indefinitely, it'll get too expensive. So I approached a few acquaintances to put me in touch with a realtor. I'll see where it goes. I've also started responding to everyone who answered my email. Surprisingly, quite a few people expressed sympathy and compassion for me. I'm not sure if their worry was real, but I decided the nice thing to do was answer. Now that I think about it, they must have felt odd receiving such an email. The very least I could do was acknowledge them. Almost 90% of the folks in my family who received the email expressed sympathy and confidence that everything will be all right. The majority of the employees ignored the email, but a handful of my father's business associates responded in like. I thanked everyone, including a few folks I hadn't originally contacted. I'm guessing they got out from other sources, as I'm sure this spread like wildfire as family gossip. But as long as people reach out to express their sympathy, I'm fine with it. At the very least, they are not attempting to obtain additional information. It may appear needy, but right now, I'm quite content to receive whatever lovely words come my way, whether they're true or not, from friends or relatives. Because, no matter how unhappy I am, I still miss her. I miss being with her. I miss my parents and family. I miss when everything was normal. Despite the fact that they betrayed my confidence, I believe it is quite reasonable for me to feel this way. It's not like I can turn a switch and stop caring. It will take me a long time to completely digest everything. But for the time being, I'm in a strange emotional limbo in which I'm unsure how to cope. I feel quite alone right now, but I suppose things will improve someday. I don't think I'll ever be able to totally accept it. Jade was the first woman I ever truly loved. But life won't stop for me. I still need to work. I still have to deal with all of the practical issues, and I have to keep going forward. It sucks. But that's the way it is. Update 3. Hello, everyone. I filed a petition to disestablish paternity about a week ago, and both parents were summoned before family court. Of course, Jade lost her head over it. She didn't know how else to contact me, so she created a phony Facebook account and began phoning me over Messenger. This happened yesterday while I was at a meeting, so I had my phone on quiet. I hadn't even noticed it at first. Later, when I checked, I discovered that she had contacted me approximately 12 times in 45 minutes. She had also sent me a slew of angry messages when I didn't answer. Apparently, she believes Grant and I have ruined her life. She told me that she did not break up with Grant after the pregnancy. Rather, he dumped her after discovering she was pregnant since he did not want anything serious. That's when she decided to continue with me, knowing that I was committed to her. But then she discovered that Grant was the father, so she tried to contact him again. This time, he simply informed her to end the pregnancy since he was not ready to be a father and had no intention of committing to her. She kept attempting to reach him, but he simply ignored her. He eventually blocked her totally. She told me everything in her messages. Now she accuses me of abandoning her, just as my brother did. And that, it appears, is how the two of us ruined her life, by leaving her alone with a baby. Grant has made it abundantly apparent that he is not interested in raising the child with her. Even if she gets him to pay child support, she won't be able to make him a true parent. And now, she claims, she and the baby will suffer. I cannot understand how any of this is my fault. I can see why she believes Grant ruined her life, despite the fact that she had an affair with him, knowing exactly who he was and that he disliked being tied down. But how does she blame me? The mental gymnastics here are insane. After reading her communications, it became evident to me that she only wanted to play the victim. In any case, I didn't want to talk to her, so I blocked her. If she knows what is best for her, she will not argue the paternity issue and will allow me to disestablish fatherhood peacefully. This allows her to save time, money, and resources while focusing on getting Grant to step up and pay child support. She's pursuing the wrong brother. That's all I have to say about it. Anyway, the whole problem will be resolved in court, so I don't want to worry about it right now. In addition, I had my parents' support. But recently, I believe they have chosen to leave me alone. In my previous update, I noted that they hadn't troubled me in a few days. Since then, they have not texted me at all. This could be the quiet before the storm, or they may discover they have already lost their reputation and investment. Making me apologize won't solve anything for them. According to what I've heard from a few relatives, my parents have gone utterly missing. They have canceled all of their social media accounts, stopped communicating with family members, and, as far as I know, my father's business has been defunct for quite some time. People believe he is in the process of selling everything, which is why the company is closed. If that's the case, I know he'll be devastated. He was always quite proud of what he created. Ah well. My father is almost in his late 50s, so I hope he has enough savings to retire. I don't believe he can start again and work for someone else at this point in his life. I am not on good terms with him right now, but I know he used to work hard. Perhaps he messed up recently, but he had always tried to be a decent parent to me. So, I hope everything works out for him. That being said, I hope I don't have to speak with him for a while. I'm just not prepared for it yet. Even without me, they still have Grant. He makes a nice living, and I don't think it bothers them that he is rarely at home. He does not have a family, and I doubt he intends to establish one. So, if my parents don't have enough savings, they can always rely on Grant. He may become their retirement fund. And honestly, I hope Jade does the same thing. I hope she gets some child support from him. That'll be enjoyable. Fun for me, but not so much for him. But after everything he's done to ruin my marriage and the life I've created for myself, that's the least I can hope for him. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll post again if anything more happens. Please keep me in your prayers, and thank you all again for your love and support. Update 4. Hello guys. I haven't posted here in a while since I've been quite busy. I suppose my previous update was about 5 weeks ago. But, in the interim, I was able to officially end paternity. That means I will not be paying child support or accepting any responsibility. It was a major victory for me, especially since I assumed she would try her hardest to drag it out. Fortunately, she did not contest it. I believe she realized that opposing it would be a waste of time, money, and resources. Clearly, the family court judge was no fool. She had already refused to comply and provide the paternity test results, so I had to do them separately. But this was not going to influence the outcome. She could have kept it for as long as she wanted, even 10 years, but it would have made no difference because I was not the father. Anyway, I was able to verify that the infant was not my biological child. And because I had only been in his life for 4 months, the court determined that my absence would have little influence on him. That is how I obtained what I desired. Since then, I haven't spoken with Jade, and happily, she hasn't bothered me. My parents' firm has been sold, and they are preparing to relocate, according to a handful of cousins. They've only told a few individuals where they're going, those who have stuck by them during this whole ordeal. But really? It's not difficult for me to guess. I believe they are relocating to my uncle's home in Iowa so that my mother can join her brother in managing the farm they inherited from their parents. This was always her plan. She had offered it to my father several times over the years, but he had no desire to leave the city. They used to argue about it a lot. Now, he does not really have an option. So he has finally agreed. At the very least, my father will continue to be a member of a family business, albeit not the one he had hoped to lead indefinitely. But all of that is in the past. I've been trying to move on from what happened. I have been going to therapy. I have been going to the gym. I have been actively working on myself. I wouldn't claim I've fully recovered, that would be a lie, but I am in the process of moving on. Some days are excellent. Some days are especially difficult. But I am getting by. Update 5. It has been over 6 months since my previous update. A lot of time has passed, and I'm feeling considerably better. I was promoted at work, most likely as a result of all those months spent immersing myself in work to keep myself distracted. Certainly not a healthy coping strategy, But at least something positive came from it. Also, I'm officially divorced. It was finalized a few months ago, but I forgot to mention it here. Because there wasn't much to divide and she didn't want alimony, the process was rather simple. We simply had to wait for the necessary time period to pass before it could be finalized. So, yes. We're officially divorced now. I haven't seen her since then, but a few weeks ago, I learned from some common friends that she had moved back in with her parents. She's currently raising her son with them. Until lately, she had been living independently in the property we used to share, but I suppose she can no longer afford the rent without me. Perhaps she merely wanted extra assistance from her parents. Honestly, hearing this bit of gossip prompted me to post this update. I hadn't given it much thought because I've been so busy. But when our mutual friends informed me of her condition, I felt compelled to return here and share. As for Grant, I believe he is the only one who has come out of this disaster undamaged. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little jealous of him. According to what I've heard from relatives, he appears to be doing well. But at the end of the day, he remains a homewrecker. He is still a bad person. So, I believe karma will catch up with him someday. Meanwhile, I'm going to focus solely on myself.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.